Close those doors in the back. We'll begin. I'm going to finish up what we were talking about last week. Just take a couple of minutes to do that about John the Baptist. And it's amazing how the Bible teaches lessons within lessons. You know, it wasn't necessary that God send a messenger for Jesus or somebody to prepare his way. He could have done what he did in other ways, but he chose that. He sends a man to prepare the way of Jesus, and he has a people that are prepared for him. And I guess the thing that I've wondered about so long is the why. Why did God do it like that? Maybe you get to wondering sometimes, why did God do that? Or why did he do it like that? And I was, when we were doing the One Nation Under God work, I was invited to a meeting in, it's either Dallas or Houston, and people that were involved in all different kinds of ministries, like Helping Hand and the Doctors Without Borders, and you know, we've got a bunch of brethren that are doctors, that are Christians, that go to underdeveloped nations and do all kinds of free services for people there that have little or no health care. And it's a wonderful work. And I learned something. I wasn't nearly as old then as I am now, so I was still learning a few things, a whole bunch of things. One thing I learned was where they took this group of doctors and nurses and healthcare people, just like some of our brethren that have gone on the trips to Baja to do dental work. And I know Brother Josh, I know he's gone in other countries and done dental work and gone with other dentists. You know, when people see that you care about them and you're willing to do something for them to help them, it seems to impress them more than when you beat on their door and say, hey, would you like to have a Bible study? Now, some people are eager for a Bible study, but in these third world countries, it's like the people in the Carolinas and in East Tennessee over there. I keep seeing the videos that they've made, and I'm telling you something, brethren. I've been in some of those places and traveled on some of those roads over there, and to look at the picture now, then all that is just gone. And they're starting all over again. I think I can imagine what it would be like, but I can't. I mean, where you don't even have a clean shirt to wear. You don't have anything you can't even scramble an egg because there's not any eggs. There's anything else that's left. And all you're left with is basically, in a lot of cases, just the clothes on your back. People who just escaped with their lives. And so they found that when they came in and they had the groups to help with the medical problems that these people had eyeglasses and all the things that they needed. Then they had a group of people to come in setting up Bible studies and things like that. And I think the reason that God sent John the Baptist was he was teaching that you have to plow the field before you plant the seed. Just a very simple lesson. You've got to till that soil and break it up. Jesus told us in the parable of the sower that was the hearts of men, that soil that he was talking about. The hearts of men. And it has to be softened. And it has to be ready to receive the seed. Because, Jesus said that some of the seed fell on the hard ground and some of the wayside, and it was not able to be productive. And so I think John was plowing the field for the Lord. He was preparing a people that were ready to hear Jesus. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't even, it's worse than that. It's not that we don't do it. We don't even think about doing it. We don't even think about, boy, I'm going to go over there and pound on somebody's door and get them up from watching their favorite television program, or God forbid that they be watching a football game, and you're going to disturb them from that. And that we also need to prepare people's hearts before we try to change their hearts. And so I think that's the why of John the Baptist. It was to teach us a very important lesson, and I'm telling you, we seem not to have grasped that we just go and we think we're just going to have to go out there and pounce on people. And so a lesson from John the Baptist. Now, Clarence tells me he's going to be gone for another week or two. And so you're stuck with me for another time or two. And I didn't realize what Steve was going to be speaking. I knew it was on prayer, but I wanted to talk to you about prayer. Something that I learned, it's been a while ago now. In fact, I looked the other day, something that reminded me how long it's been. Time gets by in a hurry when you're having a lot of fun, doesn't it? Let me ask you something about prayer. If God is sovereign and God's will, we know, is going to be done, and God controls everything, what reason is there for us to pray? I mean, if God is going to have his way about things, when I was growing up, my mama said to me, I started to say 1,000 times, it's probably more like 10,000. Go on and do it your way. You're going to anyway. Well, is that not the case with God, that God's will is going to be done? Paul?
In my opinion, God doesn't control everything. He put the forces of nature, or whatever you want to call it, into play. And then he's letting this world carry on. And God can intervene in this world if he chooses to, but God does not control everything that happens to us, everything we see him do. God doesn't go, well, I think I'll just make a hurricane over here and go. I don't think God does that. I think God just has the forces of nature operate. Now, if God decided there's a man here in Florida that he wants to save, he's got the power to save that man. He could even say, he could stop that hurricane right there. That's what he wanted to do. There it is. Done.
Well, should we stop singing that song then? The winds and the waves obey thy will.
Well,
Ah,
now they
ah.
can obey his will, but he does not cause the hurricane or the tornado. That's just the forces of nature.
All right. Anybody else got a thought on that? Yes, sir. I knew it was coming from back there.
There's God's will. I'm sorry. Of course, God's will is not going to be done in all things. It is God's will that all men everywhere be saved. That's God's will.
Nope. No, God's will, as James said there, the scripture tells us that his will, in fact, Jesus prayed for his will to be done. But we've also been given the freedom to choose whether to obey God or not to obey God. Yes.
I think the purpose of prayer is for my heart when I go to God in prayer. And I think that it helps me to be at peace, knowing that He is I believe He is in control. And I recognize that and I submit myself to His will, even sometimes when I don't like it. And even sometimes when it has taken me to what I think is almost a brink of a point in my life, an event or something like that. I think it is on me to make the choice each and every day to follow God's will.
Prayer is such a simple thing, but it is such a deep, deep, complicated thing. If you look in Acts, the 4th chapter, let me read something to you this is concerning, for truly against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together to do whatever your hand and your purpose determined before to be done. Now, Lord, look on their threats and grant to your servants that with all boldness they may speak your word by stretching out your hand to heal, that signs and wonders may be done through the name of your holy servant Jesus. You remember when Jesus was being tried before Pilate, and Pilate said, don't you know what I have the power to do to you? And Jesus said, you don't have any power at all except it be given to you. You think you've got power. You got all these soldiers and an army backing you up. You have no power at all except what God has given you. In the book of Acts, we're told that these things were ordained by God. They were prophesied in the Old Testament that Jesus was going to be the sacrifice that was to be made. And so let me just read a couple of questions to you, if I can find it in all this jumble of papers that I've got, well, I guess I'm going to have to remember it because I've turned these things upside down here. And number one, how do we know that does God answer prayers? How do we know that God answers prayers? And how does God answer prayers? How many times have you been at a hospital or you heard on the care line that somebody has had a very bad heart attack? They've been rushed to Nashville and it doesn't look good.
God always answers our prayers. Sometimes the answer is no.
Many times it's no.
We act as though, or we speak as though, if God doesn't say yes, He's not answering our prayers. But our prayers are being answered, but it's not always the answer we want.
No is an answer as well as yes. What about that person that's being rushed to the Vanderbilt hospital down there that's had a severe heart attack and it doesn't look good? We're asked to do what? To pray for them. What are we praying for? What are we asking for? Huh? Whatever God's will is. Now,
But now that's not really what we want in, when we are eating our prayer, we do want to be God's will. When you have someone that is at death's door, come on now, we're not praying, dear Lord, I may pray.
we're wanting them to live, aren't we?
If prayers could keep you here, Jerry Flatt would still be here. But it wasn't God's will. It was Jerry Flatt's time to go, and the prayers that came helped him get through that passing, helped his family and friends to get through that passing. And hopefully, by all the prayers that others were touched that saw the prayer and care for one person, maybe they were touched, the caregivers.
Well, aren't we sometimes, we're thinking, I'm asking God to perform a miracle and save them, but they're beyond human help. I'm asking God now to step in and perform a miracle to allow this person to be saved. But
I didn't want God, I didn't want Bob to be left like he was.
I don't think anybody wanted that. But remember, God does everything well. And listen, it's going to be our time. We're going to be in that situation that somebody's going to say, well, I just can't, I don't want to see them go. But we're all going to have to. I mean, God says there's appointed unto man that, wants to die. That is an appointment all of us have. Some, maybe it's too soon. Some, it's too late. There are those who live too long because they live long enough to become unfaithful to God. And then there's some who die too soon. They die before they become faithful to God. But, if a person is prepared to die, which we all should be, then it's a blessing. It is a blessing. And I'm going to tell you something. Time is passing so quickly that before we can turn around twice, half of us will be gone. I've been worshiping here at Sycamore for, 8 from 81? 73 years. Some of you, and you're not even that old. You look like you are, but you're not. And some of you are, but through medical wonders and cosmetics, you don't look that way. But 73 years I've been worshiping at Sycamore here. And I can't believe it. Let's think about prayer from the standpoint that we know God hears all prayers, not with a view to answering all of them, but he hears all of them. And the question is, how can God interject himself without it being miraculous? Well, the answer is he does it through his divine providence. We don't spend the amount of time that we need to thinking about, studying about, and trying to understand the providence of God, that God can do with his providence what he can do with his miracles. You think about that person's being taken. Clarence DeLoach, when I heard about the heart attack that he had out at Tech out there, and they rushed him to the hospital, and they said they've had to put him in a coma. And I mean, it was the worst sounding thing I've ever heard, and I thought he will not make it out of this. I mean, it was bad. And so I prayed for him. Now, here's the thing that don't register with me, maybe it doesn't register with you. when I asked God to bless him and take care of him, inwardly I was saying, don't let him die. Save him. But from what I'd heard, it was so bad. And so the idea that God is just hearing my prayer at the moment that I prayed it is where the mistake is. And we all do that. We think that I'm praying this prayer right now. God's just now hearing it. Here's the thing about it. Just imagine between my two hands is when creation took place. Back here is when there was nothing, and over here is when, and everything that was created is between my hands right there. Well, God heard my prayer back over here before there was ever anything. He heard it in eternity, before he had created anything, before he had created us. Back over here before, when there was nothing and God was in eternity. We see everything in just like it's a straight line from birth all the way to death. And we see the events, like I said, I was here 73 years ago, because I think of it in line back, all the things that happened in between. And that's the way our lives are. It's a straight line. But with God, it's a circle. God he's eternal. And back in eternity, before he had done all this work of creation, he heard my prayer. So he has had all that time through natural events. I think I'm right on this. Didn't they have an AFib machine out there that they used on him for this? I think they did. Now, how long we had AFib machines? They sure didn't have them when I was a boy or when I was a man. That's something that's a later invention. But they had it. You think of all the things medically that God has allowed to happen, that now we've got, if you have a stroke, they give you a shot of some kind of a drug that dissolves that clot, and people are not damaged like they were when I was growing up. Boy, if you had a stroke, you were done. I mean, you were done. People that lost the use of their arms or legs or speech or all kinds of things, and they couldn't do a thing in the world for them. It was living death to have a stroke. And then over the years and over time, they've learned and they found these things. And God has been all of those. What I'm saying is, God can take our prayers and he can involve them in his will. And we see amazing things happen. Now, providence is that ability to take just everyday events, natural events, and blend those into his will too. How many times you said, boy, it was lucky that they had so-and-so? Or I keep thinking about, lives right across the road over here, lost his leg in the motorcycle accident. Who? Shannon. How could I ever forget him? Shannon. That was a group on a motorcycle ride. And they're up above Knoxville, going to Cades Cove or someplace like that. I can't remember where it was. He's coming around the curve. He's coming too fast. He loses control of it. He slams into an oncoming car, and that leg is pinned in there. And he's laying there, and brethren, no guess about this, he is bleeding to death because he's severed an artery. June, how long has somebody that severed an artery, how long have they got to live before they're dead?
Depends on which artery.
Leg. Not long. He's laying there dying. One of the first cars that's behind them that's coming up there is a nurse from that works at the big hospital in Knoxville there, gotten off her shift, going home, and she is there just when it happens, gets out, puts a tourniquet of some kind on that leg, stops that bleeding, saved his life. He lost his leg, but he saved his life. Isn't that amazing how she just happened to be there at the right time, at the right place, and they, boy, wasn't that lucky? Lucky nothing. I'm telling you, that's the providence of God. The word providence means God provides. And how many times in your life and mine has God's providence spared us? A whole bunch. A whole bunch. If we all thought a little bit, we could think of some times that something happened, we think, boy, how lucky I was. You know, the word luck it's a useless word. There's not luck. There's time and there's chance and there's circumstance. And one of those three things will take us away from this world. But when you think about prayer, don't think about it just in the instant. Think about it going all the way back to eternity, where God heard these prayers, all of them. And he has used natural means. It's like making a cake where you blend ingredients together, that he takes our prayers, and you know, many times God knows that what we're asking for is not good either for us or the person that we're praying for or mankind in general.
Sometimes when I pray, I kind of prejudge what God's going to do. I pray and I think, I go, there's a good chance God's going to answer this prayer. And then other times I think, well, there's a very slim chance God's going to answer this prayer. Sometimes, well, I really want God to answer this prayer. And sometimes when I pray, it's kind of like, you're like praying for the country or something. Are you really expecting anything? You're just praying for that. So there's all different ways and different outcomes that I'm expecting from God when I pray. So is that even being really prayerful if you expect God to answer some prayers, but
Well,
not to answer other ones?
Jesus said that we need to pray expecting to receive what we pray for. We've got to pray with expectation. Now, the thing of it is, the answer may be the one that we need, not the one that we want. And we have to understand that. You've got a grandson that's 8 years old, and he wants to drive the car. And little kids want to drive. They think they can drive. And but you know it's not for their benefit or for anybody else's benefit, because there's been some real tragic cases of kids that have stolen cars that are just kids and have cost the lives of other people. So you say, no, you're too young for that. But I'll let you ride in the car. I'll drive you around in the field here, and you can sit in my lap and you can put your hands on the wheel, but I'm going to have my hands down here. Scariest thing I ever did was try to teach my sister how to drive, and we were in the field beside the house there. And I'll say we're going just like this, and all of a sudden she just turns it like that, and we almost ran through our smokehouse there. And I told her, if you don't ever learn how to drive, you're going to have to get somebody besides me to do it. I mean, God always has his hands on the wheel. And things may not necessarily go the way that we think that they should. In fact, a lot of times they don't. Our country right now, you know, in the epistles of Paul, he commands us to pray for those in the rulers in the higher places. And we think that's a waste of time. They're going to do what they want to do. But it's not a waste of time. Do you know, I seriously doubt if any of those people in the Carolinas or over in East Tennessee, how many of them do you think that were expecting the kind of devastation that they have received? I certainly wasn't expecting something like that to happen. I mean, that was once in 100 years event, or maybe even longer than that. I mean, where it washed out the interstates and it washed away whole towns, and it's unbelievable to see what it looked like. And did God cause that, or did he allow that? You know, yes.
Another question sometimes that comes to my mind, and that is, was there any part about that I contributed to? Was there something for me to get out of this? Am I supposed to learn something? And sometimes it's not even directly to me, but am I contributing somehow to events or to...
Well, according to the Herald Citizen this week, you did, because they said it's climate change. You know, that makes me laugh. That man has become so arrogant in his knowledge that he thinks that we control the winds and the waves. In Mark, I believe it's the 4th chapter, where Jesus calms the sea, and they said, who is this man that even the elements obey his commands? Who is this man? Who can do things like this? It's the man that we're here to worship this morning. That's who it is. The winds and the waves do obey his will. And God is in control of everything. To think that he would put us down here and let us run his world and his universe gives us way too much credit. But now let's talk about, yeah, James.
When we think about what happened in the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, all of the destructive weather events, every one of us, every time we see a rainbow, need to think about a time in which that looked like a little sprinkle. There was a time in which the heavens opened up, the earth opened up, and waters rose. Nothing like that. It was above every mountain on earth, and every soul, with the exception of 8, died because of sin. And events like this remind us of the power of God. God's in control. And he put his rainbow in the sky to tell us nothing like that's ever going to happen again. We may have localized things, but every time that something like that happens, we understand that we are the pilgrims passing through this world, and there's better to come.
And I thought too, you know, when you go out and if you've been to the Grand Canyon and see that, and they're supposed to have taken billions of years to cut that with, you know, water running through it, billions of years to do it. And then you look And just in a day, what the power of running water was able to do over there. The interstate, I mean, it just like he took a knife and just cut off half of it down through there. The power of that water coming through there. And then you imagine the power of the water in the flood, when the height of it and the power of it to just, that Mount St. Helens out there, when that volcano erupted. And it caused all kinds of strange things to happen. But one of the strange things was a lake that was out there. It caused it to blow out. And the power of that water coming through cut another canyon. In 2 weeks' time, you could go on the internet and look at the pictures. I believe it's 2 weeks' time. The water running through there did something that they said it would take. Scientists would have told you it'll take hundreds of years to do that. Did it in 2 weeks. The power of running water. And so we can't underestimate God's power, and especially not His power in prayer and the power of prayer. You know, in 2 Corinthians, where Paul prayed 3 times, he had this thorn in the flesh, prayed 3 times that God would take it from him. He wouldn't do it. He told him, what? My grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. And so Paul said, now I glory in that. God's grace is sufficient. I just wish that I could learn that God's grace is sufficient. When I think I've got problems and I've got troubles and health issues and all the things that we're all either got or going to have, that's my word of cheer for this morning. No, it's God's grace is sufficient. If we could just mentally, yeah, go ahead.
One of the kings of Judah, when God sent a prophet to tell him he was going to take his life, he prayed to God earnestly. And God said, I have heard your prayer. I will give you 15 more years. And we can say the power of prayer, it can work. I don't remember which one of the kings of Judah that was, but it was one of the kings.
Well, I know, but I cannot sit here and tell you right now. It was the same one that had he not have lived those additional years, he had a son that very important. I'll have to look that up, and I go, I want to say Jehoshaphat, but I don't think it was. Somebody will look that up and tell us. He prayed, and God extended his life. Yes, Charlie?
Every time the Jews were carried into, they were carried away as slaves multiple times. God had promised them if they'd turn to Him and pray, He would heal their land. And how many times He restored them to freedom? The whole group of Jews turned back to God. When they all went again, and when they returned back to God, and they returned to praying to God, God healed them and restored their country multiple times. But they had to turn back to Him to get that to happen. But their prayers and worship turned back to Him, restored their country.
Yes.
It's
Hezekiah.
Hezekiah, 2 Kings 20.
Hezekiah, the one that when the Assyrians came to destroy the city of Jerusalem. And Hezekiah. Yeah, that's where God killed 186,000 of the Assyrians. You know, that's kind of strange too, the Rabshakeh for the Assyrian king Sennacherib made fun of Jehovah. And he said, don't depend on your God. He said, we've thrown the gods of the other nations into the fire, and we'll throw your God there too. And then Hezekiah prayed to God, and God said, not a spear will be thrown, not a chariot wheel will turn. Basically, I'll take care of this myself. He sent his angel into the camp that night, and next morning 186,000 Assyrians laid dead. I will spare this city. This is my city, God said, the city of my servant David. I just wish we could all, for our benefit and the benefit of others, get a little more faith in our prayers and our praying, realizing that when we're talking to God, He heard it before the worlds were ever even created. He did. I mean, we've got to convince ourselves of that. That is the eternal God that is everywhere, every place, at all times, and can do anything. And prayer moves Him. I guess it's like listening to our children. Isn't it something how our children, and especially our grandchildren, can get us to do just about anything. Somebody said, I'm not going to take you to get ice cream, and your grandson or granddaughter comes, oh, granddad, couldn't we go? Oh, okay, get my keys. The pleadings of our children, and we have that impact on God. We are His children. We are His children, and He hears us. We're out of time. We didn't actually touch the hem of the garment on prayer because there's so much bad information about prayer and about the nature of God and everything. There's a lot of people that think that when God created everything, He just kind of wound it up and He put it out there in space, and He's sitting back now just watching to see what's going to happen. That has never been and will never be the case. God is intimately involved in everything that we do. Jesus said, even the hair of our head is numbered. That's how well that God knows us. We think we know our children or our grandchildren. We don't know them. We don't know them like that. Have a great day. Let's have a word of prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this time that we have, how precious it is to reflect on the great love and care and concern that you have for us as your children. Help us to appreciate that more and to draw closer to Thee, and help us to pray without ceasing. For we ask this in Jesus' name, amen.